Hello, and welcome to this video by Process Parameters, the UK distributor for Optris. In this video I am going to demonstrate to you how to create and manipulate measuring areas. Measuring areas are key to the operation of the PI Connect software, and this video will deal with the configuration and creation of them. Other aspects of their use will be dealt with in separate videos. When you first load the PI Connect software, you will see the default measuring area in the center of the screen. This is a rectangle. It is called Area 1, and it is measuring the maximum temperature within that area. Now, with measuring areas, we can configure as many of these as we wish, and in a variety of shapes and sizes, and we can really isolate areas of the screen to suit our needs. As with nearly all the configuration settings within PI Connect, the measuring area configuration is accessed through the configuration menu button on the toolbar here. And within the configuration menu we have the measuring area tab and the options that are available to configure those. First of all, I'm going to add some additional measuring areas to the screen, and we can do that by clicking on the Add button here. I'm going to add 4 areas to give me ability to demonstrate various shapes and sizes. So that's 4 areas created, but there's nothing stopping us creating many more, and there is no limit. To configure each measuring area is really very simple. We just need to select the appropriate measuring area within the list here, and then we can choose which options are required on the right hand side of the window. So the first thing that we can do is we can change the name of the shape or the measuring area. So let's call this one Chip 1. And clearly this name can be customized to your application. We can then choose the shape of the measuring area by selecting within the drop-down box from one of 7 options. The first 3 options are groups of pixels 1 by 1, 3 by 3 and 5 by 5, ideal for isolating temperatures in very small parts of the image. The other 4 options are rectangle, ellipse, polygon and curve splines allow us to select an area within the screen against which we can select temperature measurements. So I will go through and choose a few options for each of my measuring areas here. So I will leave area 1 or chip 1 as a rectangle. Area 2 will create a 3 by 3 measuring point. Area 3 we will choose ellipse. Area 4 I'll choose a polygon, and area 5 we'll choose the curved option. Now, as you can see, the software has placed the additional measuring areas at arbitrary positions on the screen, and we can position these wherever we need to have them, and indeed change the size of them as well. The first option is to choose X and Y coordinates for each of the points. So this is our area 5, this area here. We can choose X and Y coordinates for each corner. But frankly, the easiest way is to click OK, go back to the main screen, and then we can adjust the measuring points by clicking and dragging on the screen. So first of all, let's configure our rectangle in the middle here, and we want to isolate the main processor on the screen here. So we just position the mouse over the corner, get a placeholder and click and drag. And this is the same for all the measuring areas. So with our crosshair here, we can click and drag this to a position here, and likewise with the others. So for the polygon shape, I'd like to isolate this L-shaped object here on the screen. So if I go back to the configuration menu and select our polygon shape, we can add vertices to the shape just by clicking here. So we'll add 2 more and return back to the main screen, and again if we click and drag, very quickly we can isolate this object on the screen. And there we have it. There is nothing to stop us having overlapping areas. So for example, if I wanted our crosshair to be positioned within the rectangle, then that's absolutely fine. We can do that. Okay, so now we have the measuring areas positioned on the screen. We can now configure each one to give us the temperature output that we're really interested in. So if we go back to the configuration menu, we can look at some of the other options that are available to us. So on the right hand side of the screen we have the configuration settings for each measuring area. As I mentioned earlier, if we just check which measuring area we want to edit, then we can adjust the options on the right hand side accordingly. So for now we'll just look at the main area, chip 1, which is our rectangle here. We've already renamed it, we've already chosen a shape for it. The next thing we can choose is the measuring mode. So the default setting is maximum, so we're measuring the maximum temperature within that area. But just as easily we can measure the minimum temperature or the mean value across that area. A fourth option is available, which is called distribution. And this really is useful when you've got a vessel perhaps with a fluid that is filling up inside the vessel, and this will give you a measurement of perhaps how full the vessel is. In this case we won't use it, we will stick to minimum, maximum and mean values. So with this rectangular area we'll choose the maximum value. If we choose area 2, if we choose area 4, which is our polygon area here, we will choose the minimum value. So in addition to choosing our temperature output, we can also configure some other options. Bind to temperature profile allows us to easily configure the measuring area to follow the same shape and size as our temperature profile line on the screen. Now temperature profiles will be dealt with in a separate video, but this allows us very easy comparison between the measuring area and the temperature profile line. The next setting is very important to the operation of the software and gives you great flexibility when looking at objects with multiple materials. It allows us to configure an emissivity value specifically to a measuring area. So in this case we're looking at the main measuring area, our rectangle in the centre, and by ticking the box here we can adjust the emissivity value to something more appropriate for that material. So let's choose 0.75 for that area. You can immediately see that the temperature values have increased, they've been compensated for a lower emissivity material. This setting is completely independent of other measuring areas and indeed the global emissivity setting. The next option on the menu is a tick box labelled Show in Digital Display Group, and this quite simply gives us a digital display on the main screen of temperature. So if I untick the box you'll see that the temperature display disappears. Tick it and it returns. For our purposes we will leave it displayed. When you have multiple measuring areas on the screen, you may find that your display becomes cluttered. And certainly in our case with 5 measuring areas, we've got quite a lot of information on the screen. So the Labels in Image section allows us to adjust what's displayed on the screen. So for our purposes we will leave the name in place, but we will lose the mode and the value, and I think you'll agree that in most cases I think you'll agree now that the display is much clearer and easier to read. We can also configure the location of the labels on the screen, and this is a global setting for all measuring areas, but we've got a display here that allows us to adjust the location of the text within the screen to keep things tidy. Okay, the next option that we can choose is an automatic hotspot or cold spot finder within the image. This is particularly useful when using a crosshair measuring point rather than an area. So if we choose our crosshair area 2 and select hotspot, the display now automatically locates the crosshair on the hottest group of pixels on the screen. So if we go back to the video and play the video, you'll see that the hotspot now has moved and is located on the hottest element of the display. If there are parts of the image that are always hotter than the objects that you want to measure, perhaps there's a heating element in the display, then we can exclude certain parts of the image from the hotspot or cold spot finding function by using this option here. So if we add a new spot exclude area, we can do this in one of two ways. We can edit X and Y coordinates for the exclude area, which is shown by this dashed block box on the screen, or we can choose an existing measuring area. So in our case I'm going to choose the chip 1 area to exclude from the hotspot finder. If we now click OK and return to our main area, if I play the video again, you'll see that the hotspot is always located outside of this measuring area. Okay, so that deals with the basics of measuring areas, but there's one more element of the measuring area menu that I'd like to go through with you. So with the measuring areas we've created already, it's also possible to create what's called a calculated area. So if we create one by clicking this Add button, we get a calculated object, object 1. Now what we can do with this is a number of different functions. The simplest is that we can choose to calculate a difference between two measuring areas. So if we choose chip 1 and perhaps area 3, and then in our digital display group we can see object 1 a differential of 4.9 degrees centigrade, which is the difference between chip 1 and area 3. If we play the video, you can see that the temperature difference changes according to the values calculated from the measuring areas. In addition to calculating a difference between two objects, we can use just one measuring area. In this case again we'll choose chip 1, and we can average the output according to time to smooth out any noise or fast changes, and this is useful to when replacing traditional sensors and pyrometers with the camera and outputting the data through our process interface to other control equipment. So we can use the averaging function, but we can also use functions such as peak hold and valley hold. That concludes the explanation for setting up and configuration of measuring areas. But how can these be useful to you? Well, there are a number of aspects of the PI Connect software that are opened up by the creation of measuring areas. The most obvious is the digital display group on the main screen, at the top right-hand corner. For each measuring area we have created, we have now got a digital display of temperature within that zone. And again, by playing the video, you'll see that these are continuously updating with the temperature display. In addition to this, we can plot temperature against time on a graph for each of these measuring areas, and then export this data for analysis externally. So this would be very similar to a data logger file where you have temperature values against time. We can also create alarms within the software that can be set up to provide a signal to external hardware through our process interface. The temperature values that we generate here can also be used to generate an analog signal, again via the process interface, to external hardware such as temperature controllers and data loggers. All of these features will be explained in detail in other videos. I hope this video has been useful. If you have any questions not covered here, then please do not hesitate to contact us. Details will be shown at the end. Thank you for watching.